Austin Collier, please come forward. On February 10, 2018, Officer Austin Collier and officers of the 4th Precinct received a suspicious call at Knollwood Apartments, located at 1651 Knollwood Drive. The caller, who remained anonymous, advised that 4 subjects were walking through the parking lot around Building 17, pulling on vehicle door handles, checking for unlocked vehicles. When Officer Collier arrived at the location, he advised the other officers not to drive their vehicles into the apartments, but to shut their vehicles off, meet him in the front of the location, and to walk on foot. As the officers walked down the center divider of 1685 Knollwood Drive, they observed the suspects described by the caller. When the officers approached the suspects, they attempted to flee from the location on foot, but due to the action plan of Officer Collier's to walk on foot, all of the involved suspects were quickly apprehended. The suspects were charged with breaking and entering a vehicle and possession of burglar tools. On April 18, 2018, Officer Austin Collier initiated a traffic stop at Airport Boulevard in front of the UJ Chevrolet dealership on a vehicle that had switched tags. During Officer Collier's investigation, he found enough probable cause to detain both occupants of the vehicle. After the inventory of the suspect's vehicle, officers located crystal meth, several drug paraphernalia items, 12 different checks, 1 income tax return, 1 money order, and 8 credit cards that did not belong to the suspects. Officer Collier's relentless search, he confirmed that one of the credit cards inside the suspect's vehicle was reported stolen out of the 2nd Precinct. Officer Collier could have written the driver of the vehicle a ticket and left it at that. Officer Collier's police instinct kicked in, and he knew this was more than just a simple switch tag ticket. On May 9, 2018, Officer Austin Collier responded to Causey Middle School and conducted a self-initiated walkthrough of the school. Mr. Wally, the school resource officer, approached Officer Collier and advised him of a suspicious silver van that had been observed coming to the location for the past 2 months. He advised the driver of the van sits in the parking lot watching the children leave school and after-school basketball practice. As Mr. Wally was talking with Officer Collier about the circumstances, he observed the van in the school parking lot occupied by 1 male. Officer Collier advised dispatch of the circumstances, and officers approached the vehicle. While Officer Collier was conducting his investigation, he observed the driver had a handgun inside the vehicle in plain view. The subject was removed, detained, and identified. He was at the location because he enjoyed sitting in the shade watching the children play after school basketball. He had recently lost his wife and was an ex-basketball coach himself. He also advised officers that on occasions, he has been responsible for picking up Mr. Clark's children from the location. This story was of course verified, and his information was turned in for further investigation. On December 6, 2018, as Officer Austin Collier conducted a routine traffic stop, the passenger of the vehicle, who was later identified as Michael Lewis, attempted multiple times to exit the vehicle. Officer Collier had to give him several verbal commands to stay inside the vehicle until the traffic stop was completed. As Officer Collier waited on his backing unit, he again noticed the passenger of the vehicle had again opened his door of the vehicle. Officer Collier, knowing the possible dangers an officer can face on what appears to be a routine traffic stop, gave an order over his patrol vehicle's PA system for the passenger to remain inside the vehicle and close his door. The suspect again complied. Seconds later, the passenger exited the vehicle and began walking towards Officer Collier, saying, "Officer, can I talk to you?" Officer Collier immediately exited his patrol vehicle, began removing his duty weapon from his holster, and advised the passenger who was quickly approaching him to stop. The passenger stopped coming towards Officer Collier, but bladed the right side of his body along with his right hand from the officer's view. Officer Collier knows now that this routine traffic stop has now turned not so routine. The subject not only seeing but hearing the confidence in Officer Collier's officer's presence, he changed his direction of travel and began attempting to flee from the officer on foot. Officer Collier gave chase to the subject, but was still able to focus on the top priority of officer safety for himself and others. As Officer Collier began to close the gap between himself and the fleeing subject, he observed the subject reach in the front of his pants with his right hand. The subject removed what was later identified as a Heritage .22 caliber handgun and began to turn the right side of his body towards the officer. Officer Collier, seeing how quick this routine traffic stop has escalated, had already removed his taser device as he began chasing the subject on foot. Officer Collier, understanding his force continuum, but was unsure if he could drop his taser device and draw his pistol in time, fired his taser device. Officer Collier successfully struck the subject with the device and delivered 1 5-second cycle to the subject. During the 5-second cycle, the subject dropped the pistol and began to comply with Officer Collier's lawful commands. During the year 2018, Officer Collier answered 994 calls for service, backed on 643 complaints, made 60 felony arrests, and 214 misdemeanor arrests. Additionally, he issued 217 traffic citations and patrolled a total of 18,201 miles during his shift. His proactive nature and congenial disposition is what sets him aside from many of his peers. Anyone who has ever worked with or around Officer Collier described as a proactive officer who can sniff out the bad guy. His interview skills have been described as the sharpest knife in the set. Now, did we mention that Officer Collier is an FTO officer who trains the newer officers before they hit the streets? Officer Collier is a natural leader who also understands how to effectively perform his job while treating the citizens in Mobile with the utmost respect. There is not one particular incident that sets him apart, but rather the consistency of superior job performance on a daily basis this officer brings with him every day that he arrives to work. Therefore, it is with great pleasure that Officer Collier be named Officer of the Year for 2018.